I guess it's kind of become my thing for the time being, casting judgment on a weird looking anime mammal or two. But the trainers, they're just anime mammals too, so I don't discriminate here. Back to how this series kind of began, except I'm going in on all the trainers now, starting with all known Pokemon champions, former champions, unofficial champions, the weird kind of interim grey area champions. Obviously I can't be including spin-offs. You're not going to be seeing your man Ronald. You know, Ronald, the cardboard champ, or the most dangerous of all, the mixed martial art Pokemon champion, the notorious Glenn. With his singular Machamp. Might be underestimating the spin-off champions a bit. Can't undersell him here when he's playing by Pokemon rules. None of that turn-based etiquette, plays by the street. Those 500 punches a second might sweep everyone else here. And Ronald, oh, a Ronnie, if Ronnie's throwing them cards with the force of Seto Kaiba, he might be the most dangerous of all. In past videos where I've gone into trainers, I used their entire PC catalog to see just how good or terrible their teams can get. From remakes, the world tournaments, if they jump scare you walking into a nice cozy luxury Airbnb in a holiday town. But here it seems right to only judge based on whatever they've used in an actual championship or final boss moment. It's what they're canonically meant to have for sending 10-year-olds crying in the Uber home and getting legally chucked back into the gulag of public school. So here's allegedly the 16 league champions ranked. Trace. Still easily the worst by far. The Indigo Plateau and let's go. It shouldn't even qualify you here really. It's like saying you're an F1 champion just because you finally managed to get a hold of that Legoland license. Only 4 minors and all, eh? Nice one. I don't even have to explain this one again too much. I think I did it justice the first time around, back when I spoke about Pidgeot being the heavyweight spectacle of his team, saying something like your team peaked 10 steps out your front door. I think that really sets the standard for him. And then your man's Pokemon all have 3 moves, which I don't really get, because if you've got a move slot empty and your brain unlocks how to spit in a way which causes bodily harm, that lesson is mandatory. You as a Pokemon are entitled to that skill. You are getting that ability whether you like it or not. That means that this kid took time out of his day to bother the poor old move deleter to make sure his team had a quarter less ammunition to fire at you. As if that was needed, when he's already armed with an Elite Four team that looks like he had to take out the rental choices in Pokemon Stadium. Marowak, Vileplume, Rapidash, Slowbro, Jolteon, and Pidgeot, at least in the Mega form, give him something. To be a champion, you need a team of blockbuster Pokemon. And now Trace over here, he took that advice a bit too literal. He's only got those Pokemon for the weekend. A gang of rented Pokemon with a quarter of their brain missing. And at first, I thought that made him an awful trainer, but the more I think about it, he might just be the dumbest or the most arrogant. Maybe Trace is working all of us. He's actually one of the best trainers going, but decided to put himself on a challenge run. And then he still won with those handicaps. Admittedly, the easiest game to pull it off in down Legoland Let's Go Kanto, but even then, he somehow managed to spawn up a big, rare, fatty Trace dub. He had to get a huge upset victory, going over who would become one of the strongest champions in Lance. Let's Go accessibility for players of all ages, so it makes sense Trace is at a disadvantage compared to the player. Actual baby game for dumb babies to baby their way through and easily win kind of team. So if he could beat even a nerfed Lance with that much of a disadvantage, who knows how much of a weapon he'd be if he shifted into maximum overdrive. But that's no excuse. He chose to make himself weaker, so he has to live with the consequences of his little challenge run by being the weakest champion. For the player, the easiest Hall of Fame bouncer going. I didn't want this guy to be last, but luckily Trace was there to be far more deserving of the honor of being none of the people's champ. But when you don't have a full team, you specialize in one type, you're a bit more than out of your prime, you're not going to be competing with the rest of them too well. Even with all of that holding him back as he is here, still would probably give Trace's team a good 40 lashes. I'd rather be a man down but have that Gigantamax than have a Marowak who left its bone in the cab ride over. It's difficult to judge when you've only seen them as a former champion. Seems like in his day, he might as well have gone by Steven Steel. Doesn't waste his time playing about with rocks. The future is now, old man. Steel is the societal meta, and having the grog provider Berserker himself as the frontman, that already cements this trainer as not just a champion, but an absolute legend and all. I said interim champion grey area earlier because I'm going to include Alolan contenders here, even though they're the final battle and they follow the exact same formula as a champion battle. I know they're not officially champions. Well, I mean, unless you're just bad at the game and they beat you. In Sun and Moon, there's never been an Alolan League winner. The only other time this seemed to have happened was back in Red and Blue. I could have sworn in the first games, you're built up to think that there's only the Elite Four and then you're the champion. Having the fight blue at the end, it was like a little shock twist. A twisted zesty lemon all over your team's stab wounds after getting mugged by 3 Dragonites. With a bit more prep time, Blue probably would have had the Nickelodeon slime set up for when you walk in. Blue just by default became the champion because I guess he was the first to make it that far. So if you went by that logic, assuming How or Kukui actually fought their way through the Elite Four and Alola, How definitely anyway. Kukui I'm sure has his contacts, or he just let the bouncer get 5 minutes alone with those 8 bricks he's been smuggling underneath his belly. But technically, they're champions. But with all of that being clarified, even if How were a champion, his legs wouldn't be getting tired anytime soon. Your man's not standing there long. Peony having Berserker gives him a permanent buff by default. How having Crabominable does the exact opposite. His grade is capped at D tier alone, just for that. Committing the #1 sin on the Pocket Monster commandments. Thou shan't evolve the perfect specimen of the Sesh Crab. How must have spiked his Carlin while down Berserker's pub, chucked him in the icy cold to evolve without Crabrawler even knowing. If he knew How was trying to turn him into this pocket monstrosity, he'd have rapid spun his jaw. But aside from that, his team's serviceable? Look, I don't follow the anime, but it seems Decidueye is what makes the most sense for How's team starter-wise. And from there, a fairly textbook late-game team. Vaporeon, Alolan Raichu, Noivern. Sure, Tauros, why not? Pokemon champion How. I'd say Pokemon breeder. Maybe swimmer How has a more realistic ring to it. Team like that could maybe get yourself a nice island kahuna gig to pay the bills, but champion? Nah. Yeah, nah. You'd think Wallace would have learned from the last guy they had for Hoenn, doubling down on their mono-type teams, and you're just asking to be a transitional champion. When you have Steel or Dragon specialists, you don't really question it. You know, some of the more rare types to come across, it makes sense they hone in on one of them, but specializing in the most common brand of specimen that your world has to offer, with plenty of common weaknesses, now Wallace is just asking for a peddling. So he might be solid as far as gym leaders go with that moist little lineup of Milotic, Ludicolo, Gyarados, Whiscash, Tentacruel, and the Wailord. But here with the big boys, you gotta be a bit more flexible. You gotta branch out to a few other types, especially when it's based around water. For it should be a top 10 trainer worldwide. Definitely one of the more papered champions you could beat. I'm sure in another era, Wallace would have had a diabolical reign all over the Hoenn region. One they'd write demonic stories about to make sure your kids don't swim too far out into the ocean. I don't. Wallace might be there, watch it. But nah, a bunch of eggheads in the 1700s are there to go and change the metagame for him, didn't they? Unova's schools must have an attendance of like 2. Any kid who can afford a few Pokeballs can make a career out of battling if Alder is considered the biggin, the best your country had to offer at one point. If you ask the character designer, supposedly the champion of champions. I mean, yeah, Alder, you are the champion of champions. At least 4 of them, anyway. He's a fairly strong trainer. Volcarona, Druddigon, Excelgor, Excavalier, Sure, Unova, Tauros, and Vanillux. That's decent. It's a solid lineup. But champion of champions? You come at me with a title like that, your team better be like Obelisk the Tormentor, John Cena, Miss Finster. Damn, only the champion of champions can tame that one. He more than lives up to that title in black and white too, when he's not even in the league anymore. He might have stayed at the top of the mountain if he took it as seriously as the World Tournament. Crocodile, Chandelure, Conkeldurr, now that's far more worthy of the title he allegedly has. Almost a big power play for the most champion of champions to step down from the league for the sequel game, where his team only gets even more tailor-made to legally batter 10-year-olds Worlds in a government-sanctioned matchup. Where was all of this World Tournament beef hidden in the first round? No wonder N slapped him up before you even got the chance to. If Alder actually tried in the first game, he could have just stole the final battle against N from you. Complete kill stealer, wrapped up the storyline there and then, while you're still messing about shooting 3-pointers in N's playroom. Old Steven Stone has a bit of wedge to him, but gives himself that disadvantage for taking his birth name a bit too literally. You know how many common weaknesses Stone has? An entire era came to a close for exactly that reason. Had to base his whole team around steel and a few dusty rocks he had 3D printed. From the look of his team, most Victory Road ace trainers are only about an Aggron and Metagross shy of being Hoenn champ. His team individually aren't too bad. Skarmory, Armaldo, Cradley, Claydol, Aggron, and the main man Megagross. But mono teams for a champion are just asking for a short-term title reign, especially Rock. I reckon that's why Wallace succeeded him in the first place. Ludicolo dancing in a puddle welds half of his team back into the ground. It's actually respectable that he became the league champion. With someone like Lance, it's obvious he's gonna be speed running the leagues. If you go about on a cape day to day, you better be famous enough to get away with it. You'd have to be a very powerful man to not get publicly bullied, casually browsing the meal deals in Tesco, unironically dressed like DC Doctor Strange. He can brute force his way through almost any league. The Seto Kaiba.
All that matters is monsters with big, swollen, sweaty biceps.
Approach. But Steven, he just uses the Pokemon that he just likes. He made it this far with his favorite pastimes of steel, a couple of rocks, and pottery. It's a shame Excadrill didn't exist, because out of all added Pokemon from the World Tournament teams, that's insanely on brand for Steven. Not just type-wise, but now he's got a little Moleman to do his dirty work. Go about finding all those fossils for him to revive and make bang average teams out of. Wouldn't blame him if he wanted to get rid of Claydol after finding out Excadrills exist. I'd be pawning Claydol off on Facebook Marketplace just to pay for Excadrill's manicures. Gotta keep those claws in primo condition. Diantha, the only trainer in Kalos who actually read the manual, actually read the legislation, actually got a full belt on her, unlike the majority of Kalos trainers. So I'm just glad the other third of her team spawned in. That's actually surprisingly decent for how starved Kalos is for manpower. It's a bit more like a balanced Steven Stone team. You have the Mega, the Fossil Pokemon, a pseudo legendary, then she's got Hawlucha running the ropes, and an extra plump Gorgeist to making for a slightly more well-rounded six-pack. Just like Steven's fossils, Tyrantrum and Aurorus, they're a bit squishy with that rock type slapped on them, but that's made up for a lot more compared to Steven's team, with Mega Gardevoir, Goodra and Hawlucha all being fairly decent weapons. It's nothing too special. You're not going to need to save your game before entering the final room, but for how lackluster the Kalos League is, she makes for a perfectly okay champion. Yeah, put her there. And it is a bit of a weird case like Kukui and Hal, but I'd expect nothing less convoluted from a man whose legal government name is Natural Harmonia Gropius. Completely forgot that's what N was for. Sounds like something Plankton would say trying to sing the fun song. He didn't get the 8 badges since he hated battling, but seeing as he beat Alder and it's heavily implied he rinsed through the Unova and Elite Four, arguably the strongest 4-pack going, I think it's worthy to class him as the champion as much as it wasn't a sanctioned matchup or anything like that, unlike how being the plastic champion he is, Giga Chad Gropius sweep the hardest league and he's like, nah, keep your world title. It still counts kind of, since you the player still win the league after sorting him out. One of the few trainers here who has a legend canonically, but when it comes to the other 5 choices, it seems N's a big fan of randomizers, because that's what his team seems to do every time you face him. Got rid of his Darumaka Scraggy Sandile Ferroseed, part of his gimmick being conditioned to hate how humans use Pokemon. Doesn't want to use the same ones for battling constantly. If you kept a hold of them, caved in to the urge to cockfight, you'd be looking at Reshiram, Conkeldurr, Ferrothorn, Darmanitan, Scrafty, Crocodile, Sigilyph, Seismitoad. There's so many options. The team you're left to face with is still solid enough in all fairness. Reshiram definitely pulling the weight a fair bit, but the rest, they're alright enough. Caracosta, Archeops, Zoroark, Klinklang, and you've got to throw that Vanillix in there. This is why I love the stupid lore around Pokemon. You have this brainwashed their whole life man whose passport has him listed as That's some kind of vegan milkshake, fighting off the one person who can stop him from dominating the world with a twin cone Mr1upz. Don't forget the flake. Don't forget the flake. Nothing more big fight feel than scaling Mount Silver. And what do you find at the top? Not a legendary Pokemon, no new area. It's just you. The original player becomes your final test, the secret boss, passing of the torch moment between generations. Still hasn't been a grander stage in the franchise. So much with so little. No music, just the sound of the wind. Not a word spoken. Looking in a mirror, he is the undisputed people's champion. But as I've just described there, everyone loves to romanticize him far too much. You're just walking up a few steps and having a rare candied up optional boss fight. But there's still so much going on with so little really happening, purely because it's red. He has that aura, but that aura wouldn't protect him from getting worked by half the trainers on this list, because no matter what Pokemon Red has used throughout the games, it just feels right that his 6 Pokemon are Pikachu, the Kanto Trio, Snorlax and Lapras. They're all just lock-in choices for the man, the Enigma, the primary color. I'd personally much prefer the Gen 2 approach of having an Espeon if this were my team instead of the Lapras. Heart Gold team over here putting Blizzard on 3 Mons. My man, you're already fighting in a blizzard. It's inconvenient, but Lapras makes a lot more sense, since in Kanto a man just hands you one after serving up Blue a vicious spanking in a Silphco break room. You know, your man had a Lapras in his pocket that whole time. This whole little terrorist attack going on with Team Rocket invading, and you've had that on you the whole time. You know, just a shout. I mean, maybe, I don't know, what do I know, man? You maybe could have used that. Stop Team Rocket from folding you into a filing cabinet. Good thing future league champion Red came along and took that off his hands so it can be put to some proper use in the pockets of a folder of people in the filing cabinets, not the filee. I say interim champion grey area earlier, I also mean glory hunters like Professor Kukui politicking their way into trying to be the first Alolan champion. Wasn't satisfied enough being heavyweight champion in the ring, had to go and give the business to the under 11s down the Pokemon League too. Had to get his way in somehow and ruin it for the kids. How and the player think they're getting a world title, not if Kukui and his Domino's pizza box pectorals have anything to say about it. Kukui takes the Boris Johnson approach. If he's playing rugby, I don't care if they're year 4s, it's no mercy. If Hal has Rowlet, the player would have Litten, so Kukui would be left with Poplio. But that ain't happened, alright? Incineroar belongs to the Kukui. The professor was sculpted by the gods to own that Incineroar and tag team with him in that squared circle. He can have whatever starter he wants. He doesn't care because clearly he knows how to build a team compared to Hal. Yeah, save the big boy fights for the ones with the PhDs and the bodies built like a Metagross. You know what I mean. You know each one of them abs has a brain of its own. Soon as you see the Magnezone there, you already know he's got that professor brain on him. And the Alolan Ninetales, immaculate taste. I'd expect no less from a man with a body made of finely aged cement to appreciate the aesthetically pleasing Alolan Ninetales. Then he's got the always reliable Snorlax, Braviary, and Lycanroc's there as well. That's a fairly robust team he's got laying around the office. By name, the closest thing we're ever gonna get to Pokemon Trainer Yellow. He's part of the exclusive club of champions who legally own a legendary creature, and one of the few former champions that we know of. Really, more of the game should explore trainers being former champions like Gala's done here. In an ideal world, Professor Oak is on this list as well, because we all know he was a bit of a playboy back in his prime. Smacking about Agatha, retires and pursues a cozy career in science, raises his grandson Blue to carry on the family legacy of smacking about Agatha, hustling like a true oak. Possibly a top 5 champion, who knows, we'll never know. At first, I didn't think much of old Mustard. You name him after a D-tier condiment, hey, you're setting my standards a bit low already. But pound for pound, his team's actually got quite a lot of wedge behind it. Can see why he was a champion, especially if this is out of his prime. Urshifu, Single Strike, Corviknight, Kumo-O, Mineshow, Luxray, and Lycanroc, you're there again too, okay. That's a fairly elite set of mons he's got laying around the dojo for a man deep into his retirement. You just know he was a weapon back in the day. Can tell by his league card. That Lance effect again. You'd have to be very well established to go about day-to-day shirtless with a cloak on and somehow manage to avoid being on a register. Yeah, the same one Gallimimus on. It all makes sense why Alder was coasting his way as the top Unovan trainer. How he was just requested to be the 5th trainer. Doesn't have that killer instinct. Doesn't really care. He just wants to have, like, you know, just bit of a walkabout. The true Unova kingpin, Iris, is exactly the sort of trainer to muscle their way to the top. Pulled a Wallace, getting that gym leader to Pokemon League promotion, but pulled a Lance in the execution. Iris has like 4 different battles against you. That's what you get when you're the final boss of a region back when the games weren't as stingy on the, you know, content. She actually has our most difficult team already laid out for you for that challenge mode rematch. Hydreigon, Salamance, Archeops, Aggron, Lapras, and Haxorus. Even if Aldo wanted to take the helm back and be champion of Unova again, he's never getting past this absolute meat factory of a team. I'd actually put all the chips down on any one of the Unovan Elite Four taking Aldo down without even breaking into the full restores. And Iris would probably do the same to near enough half the trainers on this list. You see, there's levels to this. It's really telling how one of the weak links for Iris might as well be Steven Stone's vice captain. I don't want to hear otherwise. I don't want to hear about what went down in that Silphco break room, alright? It's all gaslighting, because everyone knows 9 out of 10 times blue collapse red. The superior primary color, no contest. The only thing putting blue back near his hometown in the gym and red on the top of the mountain is a bulk shipment of rare candies with a hint of main character syndrome. Look, the only reason red beats blue is cause I'm playing as him. Red's career peaked as you picked up and put down the Game Boy. Once that time has passed and he transforms into a mountain loitering NPC, he just has a glory hunter team. He's got the team of somebody who watched the movie like twice around the friend's house when they were 7 and played Pokemon Go for a month in 2016. Blue knows what he's on about. He's the one who owned the movie at the little sleepovers when they were 7. He's not held back by lore or carrying around the Pikachu. He's not the biggest fan of Darwin. He's actually done a bit of research, actually read the Pokedex a bit, definitely has the oak blood in him since he knows how to craft a well-balanced team. The starter choice for red, blue and green, it should be easy enough, right? But it seems to change constantly. But here, you can't deny your caveman brain urge to go blue. Blastoise just feels right, along with Alakazam, Arcanine, Executor, Machamp, and then that Gen 3 rematch Tyranitar. Machamp's not actually on any of Blue's Indigo Plateau teams somehow, yet in almost every portrayal there is, he's always got that 4-armed strap on him. Going against my own rule there, but it seems wrong to not have Machamp there. For a mostly Gen 1 team, that's a spicy roster for a non-playable character. The full kit wanker himself. Lance has quite the good little PC he's been building up, like an Argos catalogue of pseudo-legendaries. You face him in like 4 or 5 of the games, so he's just been stocking up every few years. You just knew he'd be getting the Dragonite of every other region, so Salamance, Garchomp, they were probably both tattooed on each of his quads during the flights over there, but I doubt he'd ever leave the Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Charizard, and the larger of the 3 Dragonites down in the PC, so they're a lock-in for the team too. That Charizard gets nice and megaed up with the X-Form and all. With that big slice of tricep meat he calls a team, he's still at a slight disadvantage in terms of defending his champion status since he is still a type specialist. But he's not even fully a dragon specialist at this point. He's more like a pseudo-legend specialist. If you're unlucky enough that you step up to him in Unova, they even throw him in a Hydreigon. That's like half of them checked off already. Even without that and just the 6 he's used within the Indigo Plateau, and right there you've got a champion who doesn't just win the region's league. If he felt like it, if it fit his ideologies, I don't know, the man could probably turn the region's communist. If I were living in Kanto or Johto, I'd be hoping none of you bullied this guy in school. Yeah, you all made fun of the cape. All those incredible jokes. Haha, no capes. Haha, yeah. All those Doctor Strange jokes. Like, haha, hey lads, hey lads, here comes Professor Weird. Yeah, now look at you. One of Hydreigon's heads is laughing at you, while the second is tearing apart your living room furniture. And you're so shook, you haven't even noticed the third head is raiding a couple Steve Weisers from your fridge. Don't check the freezer though. That ice gives him a bit of a spook, alright? Lance hears the ice cream man down the road like the feds are coming for him. If the Pokemon world had its own version of the 7, you know, from the boys, Leon, he'd probably be Homelander. Well, nah, I think Lance has him beat there. He is much more full kit wanker, always fully geared up. Fair enough. But you get what I'm saying. If there has to be a champion of champions, it's gonna be Leon. In Pokemon terms, this man may as well be king of England. He only fights in sold out stadiums. The man doesn't even have an Elite Four established to reach him. He has his own system for a Pokemon League, making you go through an elimination tournament. Your man is that confident, calling up every strong trainer to come and have a go. Try and have a crack at the Homelander. Dragapult, Aegislash, Haxorus, only halfway through and it's already looking diabolical. Of course he's got Charizard juiced up and then the last 2 slots of his team vary based on your starter choice. But another fire type in Cinderace doesn't make sense to have, so out of his entire PC, the most lethal combo here would have to be Seismitoad and Rillaboom. It's only fitting that he uses like 2 native Galar Pokemon to get this far. Now that is a proper God-fearing, Brexit fury unleashing Englishman, stealing other countries' resources to get ahead. Leon had me second guessing myself when I saw his team. Has the undommable trainer finally been topped? But then the Sinnoh remakes piped up purely as a stern reminder that every other champion is the sub in comparison to Cynthia. And it was a big reminder for me, as always with Cynthia, firm but fair clobbering. I never struggled playing Pokemon. No one does, really, especially these days. But I took like an embarrassing amount of time, like a good 4 or 5 tries on a modern Pokemon game because I got a bit cocky thinking I could slide on through with a team that all gets wiped out by ground steel and fighting. I only made it past Garchomp because it ran out of PP for Earthquake. Even in Arceus, it was a bit of a challenge as far as Pokemon games go, at least, since, you know, we discovered trainer teams are apparently genetically hardwired into them. Her prime rematch team from the Switch version is the way to go. Spiritomb, Togekiss, Milotic, Lucario, Garchomp, and they even throw in a Porygon Z now as well, as if she didn't have enough juice. What a set of weapons. Just gonna leave that team the way she's left it. Like, who am I to question the selection, especially after getting swept 5 times in a row? Here's what I'm gonna do. Just gonna let it be and pray towards Spear Pillar 5 times a day, thanking Arceus that she hasn't got a hold of the Megastone for Lucario. If anything, the Megastone should go to Garchomp to nerf her a bit. The real champion of champions doesn't need any enhancements. Lance can have his Megas, Leon can have his Jumbos, Red can have his main character syndrome. Cynthia isn't about that. Base form only. Raw dogging you. No gimmicks needed to be the undisputed world champion.